Good evening, and welcome TCR Dialogue's family, friends, and guests. If you're tuning in as a member of the AME Church, please drop a note in our comment sections to let us know where you're tuning in from. We want to make sure that we welcome you more directly, and we know who we're in fellowship with, who's joining us tonight for this conversation. We are grateful for the opportunity to hear from the first African-American man to serve as the U.S. Army's Surgeon General, and he'll be introduced by his father in ministry and our very own Senior Bishop Emeritus Bishop John R. Bryant.
Praise the Lord. It is a joy today to introduce my brother and friend and leader. I'm so proud that we can share that we both are Marylanders. And Bishop of the church and then General for the Armed Forces and the nation is a product of Morgan State University. There he distinguished himself not only as a student, but also an athlete. Graduated from there and did his graduate study at the University of Michigan, and then at a couple of the Army Corps universities where he did additional studies and graduates. He is a leader. I've watched him from the time he entered the ministry in the 10th Episcopal District, and not only across the years has he represented the country and the armed forces, but he has represented the body of Christ. He is unashamedly Christian. And in his Army command throughout, you can see his love and his patience and his great generosity toward others. He is wonderfully married. It was my privilege at his retirement to watch the commander of the base present his wife with as much fanfare and quality as they used to introduce him. They have really been partners in service to the nation and in service to the church. From this marriage, beautiful children, all of them committed to service. And he has risen through the ranks. He is now Lieutenant General, a history maker, and he is this country's Surgeon General of the United States Army, and he is Commanding General of the United States Army Medical Command. You see all of that awards and decorations on his chest. That's just a small fraction. I started counting the awards and I stopped at 20 and they still rolled on. But a wonderful man, a wonderful husband, a wonderful father, a wonderful leader, a wonderful servant leader. And it is my privilege to present him to you today for this very important conversation. Lieutenant General Raymond Keith Dingle. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Bishop Bryant, and welcome to you, Lieutenant General Dingle. We're grateful to have you on.
Thank you, Reverend Jazz. It's a blessing to be here.
Absolutely. So let's just start with some basics. For those who are unfamiliar with your role, your job, can can you explain the significance of your role as Surgeon General of the U.S. Army and what it means for you to be the first African-American man to hold the position? I know that there was a woman before you, but what it means for you to be the first African-American man to hold the position?
Thanks, Reverend Jazz. Yes, I will. Let me first say thank you to my father in the ministry, Bishop John Bryant, Papa John, as I call him. We've been together for a long time, and he's been a tremendous mentor and example for me that allowed me to achieve and do the things that I've been blessed to do. So I am the United States Army's 45th Surgeon General. I am the first African-American male and non-clinician to be designated the Surgeon General in any of the armed forces, so of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Out of the 240 plus years of our nation, I'm the first African-American male. I am also the commanding general for the United States Army Medical Command. And what that means is in the Army, everything medical, falls under, my leadership. I have a total of about 122,000 soldiers, civilians, and contractors that work in Army medicine under my leadership. And everything from doctors, nurses, dentists, veterinarians, physical therapists, specialists, medics, all fall within the realm of our Army medicine. Scientists, researchers, again, all Army medicine, and under the responsibility of the Surgeon General. And so my first responsibility under Title 10 or law is I report to my boss, the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army. And I'm the advisor on everything medical, training, equipping, manning, recruiting, developing, and leading. And I owe that to her, Secretary Wormuth. She's the Secretary of the Army, and our new Chief of Staff of the Army, General Randy George. And so I am that medical expert that advises them. And then, as I mentioned earlier, as a commanding general, I lead 122,000 plus people for a 1 million man army, which we conserve the fighting strength.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that gives a little bit of background information or some foundational information for those who are like the U.S. Attorney, the U.S. Surgeon General. What's that job entail? So thank you for giving us some context for our dialogue. If you don't mind, can you share with us? So we had your pastor on, your father in ministry, and there's a reason for that. We want you to share with us a bit about how your faith journey and the role that your spiritual formation played in your career aspirations. As Bishop Brian mentioned, you have risen through the ranks from the very bottom to what many would consider the very top. And so can you share with us a little bit about your faith journey and the role that your spiritual formation played in your career aspirations?
My faith journey has been the cornerstone and stepping stone for everything that I've done and been able to do in the Army. Again, growing up, I grew up Baptist, and so I was coming from a Baptist family, entered the military, out of Morgan State University. And as I entered the military, at the same time, I had my calling into the ministry in high school, but yet I struggled being an athlete and didn't answer that calling. My first assignment as a second lieutenant, I was a platoon leader in Fort Knox, Kentucky. I answered my calling into the ministry. And as I entered my calling to the ministry at a gospel service church in Fort Knox, Kentucky, I automatically was also enrolled in school at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. My initial calling, I thought, was to immediately just drop everything, get into the chaplaincy, and become an Army chaplain. And so thus, me going part-time while I'm a full-time Army officer as a lieutenant, serving and also raising my family. At that time, as I put my faith into action and attending school, the Army chaplaincy came back to me and said, well, Lieutenant Dingle, we don't have any spaces for, Baptist chaplains, and so you can try to resign your commission, but it's not guaranteed you're going to come back in. God was like, that's not what I have for you. And so I kept going through the military. As I left Fort Knox, Kentucky, I went to Germany and I met Chaplain Merrill Gathers. He was an AME chaplain. as we were serving the gospel service in Schweinfurt, Germany. I answered my calling, did my first trial sermon in Schweinfurt, Germany back in 1996. And as we continued to serve that community, and it was time for me to leave the PCS to San Antonio, Texas, Chaplain Gathers said, "Hey, Scott, I want you to visit this AME Church." And I'm like, Chaplain Gathers, man, I'm Baptist. I don't know what this AME Methodist is. That's Methodist. That's something special. He said, "No, Scotty, read this book, doggone it. And I want you to visit, Emmanuel AME Church." I went to San Antonio, and the first church I went to was New Creation Christian Fellowship, not listening, to my pastor at the time. And God said, "Okay, man, now listen to what pastor said." And so I visited Emmanuel AME, and the rest is history. Fell in love with the church, met my father in the ministry, Bishop Bryant, and every time he would come down, he would snatch me up, and I'd be his, executive while he would be in San Antonio, and he would show me leadership in its truest form. And it had such an impact on me and my leadership that as I was going through the board of examiners, my mother in the ministry, the late Bishop Sarah Davis. And so going through the board of examiners under Bishop Sarah Davis and, Papa John being my father in the ministry, pouring into me and let me see so much about leadership in the church, it had a resounding impact on my leadership in the Army. So I completed the board of examiners. And as I completed the board of examiners and my classmates, I thought that I was not following my calling. I said, I'm not pastoring. My classmates are all pastoring in Texas, the 10th Episcopal District. And here I am in the Army. A few years had went by and I hit a spiritual lull about I'm not answering and doing God's will. And I said, I'm not in ministry like my classmates pastoring. I'd been offered pastoral charges while in the military. And I said, well, I can't do it because I'm teaching and I'm leading this here. And it was just too much. But as a major, I said, it's time for me to answer the call. And I want to look at getting out the military to help my spiritual journey. God spoke to me, through this evangelist, and out of nowhere, she walked up to me and told me one day, to make a long story short, she said, don't think that you're not doing God's will there, Dingle, because I see you leading a whole bunch of sheep. You're surrounded with sheep and you're doing God's will. I didn't realize what that meant until a few years later, as I started elevating through the ranks and commanding at every level and then becoming a general officer. The number of people in ministries that I've been able to reach out and speak into was in fact my ministry. And so as I wear these 3 stars as the Surgeon General, that became my ministry with the number of people that I've been able to touch and speak to and spread the gospel through my action, words, and deeds. So it's been the centerpiece for my leadership and service to our country in the United States Army. And as Bishop said, it has been the center of everything that I do because I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ Jesus. And that's my faith and my walk that has blessed me by the grace of God to achieve what I've done thus far.
Oh my goodness. Wow. General, I'm inspired. I'm inspired. There's so much about your journey that I was not familiar with. Your relationship with Sarah Davis and Bishop Brian, you could not have been connected to better people in the faith, better people in our tradition, and the trajectory that you were on within our church was unfamiliar to me. I understood that faith was a significant part of your journey and the AME Church was a part of that. I did not know that you felt called to a traditional form of ministry. You and I share that identity, as I have obviously been ordained in the AME Church. But the part that you would not know or would not have known until this moment is that I was also a commissioned officer. And I also considered going into the chaplaincy, but you went on with the military route. I took the reservist route so that I can invest in full-time ministry. And so same beginning, but we went on 2 different paths. So I appreciate you sharing that story. I'm inspired by it. So thank you for that.
No, it's like I said, the centerpiece, and we got to tell our story. The one thing I didn't say, and I always tell Bishop and remind him of when we were in the 10th Episcopal District, and he would come down and Pastor Tolbert, we like, okay, Bishop wants you to, to be his exec, and Bishop would always take me around and say, okay, Scotty, I want you to watch. I want you to see how this happens, and he showed me so much, and that's where I learned humility. As as a commissioned officer, the power that you have, but Bishop, who has always been a tremendous humble leader, was showing me leadership through humility. He would get asked to, I'm sorry, Bishop, I'll tell him, I don't know if he's listening or not, to come to the Potter's house, and we're in Texas, and I'm excited, like, oh, Bishop, let's go to the Potter's house. Man, big as that is, TD Jakes, let's go. And he had just been listed in the, if y'all remember, the Ebony Best Preachers and Bishop's #1. And I'm like, even though he's #1, he's a humble man that's right here teaching me. And I'm like, Bishop, we got to go to Potter's house. We're going up here. And he told me this one day that I'll never forget. He said, Scotty, no. He said, we don't need to go to the Potter's house. He already has a blazing fire. We need to go out to Timbuktu, Texas, where it's 1 or 2 people, and help create a fire. And my mind was just like, bang, just blown, And then Mama Davis, Bishop Davis, Sarah, always, used to tell me, as I was preaching everywhere and the youth minister for the 10th Episcopal District South of Texas Conference, she would say, all right, Scotty, don't get the big head. Don't get the big head, because it's intoxicating, being in the ministry with so much attention, but don't you fall prey to the big head. And I applied the many lessons that Mama Davis and Papa John have taught me, which again, I think has been the wind beneath my wings to lead 122,000 people.
I love that. I love it. So you have answered some of the questions that I was going to ask about your relationship with Bishop Bryant and the AME Church, and how that journey kind of helped to usher you into your career. But since you've already answered that question, I want to hear a little bit about how, in civilian terms, we're going to switch gears a little bit, how in civilian terms you navigated your career progression. So the schooling you acquired, the prerequisite roles, and your intentions post-retirement, because that's a major point in your career right now.
So in civilian terms, my matriculation has been from Morgan State University, took ROTC, and then became a commissioned officer, a second lieutenant. As an officer, you're always in leadership positions. And so, from lieutenant to captain, there's educational requirements that you must hit in military schooling. So I hit all those gates. And then as a field grade officer, which is a major, about 10 years in the military wants you to have your master's degree. As Bishop mentioned, I have 3 master's degrees, through Central Michigan, and then 2 through the military, some unique schools that I was selected for. And then those master's degrees are educational foundations are paired with your military assignments. And so as you reach different levels or gates, you're then put in what's called command, which means you lead people in your organizations. Company command, battalion command, brigade command. Those are just different levels of organizations going from small to very large that you're responsible for. All the way up to where I'm at now as the commanding general of the United States Army Medical Command, of having to lead that organization. So in civilian terms, the matriculation for me has just been a blessing. Of quite a few firsts as a male, like the School of Advanced Military Studies is a school that teaches the art of operational thinking and problem solving. Very select people get a chance to go through that, and then your career afterward is assigned to take on the toughest problems that the world face and the military is involved with, whether it's Afghanistan or Iraq. Post-military, now I've served for 35 years in the Army on active duty service. Trying to retire, here pretty soon. However, my initial thoughts on retirement is after 35 years, 2 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, and leadership at this level, my first plans are to just do absolutely nothing for
Yeah.
about 6 months. I'm not doing anything. I've been offered some jobs and opportunities, but I'm right now leadership tapped out, mentally, physically, and I just want to just power down and just decompress, deprogram, de-stress, from this journey. And then, after 6 months or so of doing nothing and traveling with my wife and doing cruises, I'm going to just go easy with, sitting boards and consulting, advising. Ministry is always paramount. I have my best friend, Pastor Gerald Graham, who pastors some circuit churches in the Baltimore conference on the Eastern Shore, the Preston Circuit. Help him with ministry. Him and his wife are my wife and I's best friends. And so I've been helping him post-military. We just want to help him blow up that ministry wherever we are in Southern Maryland, and whatever God has in store after that. I won't say I will never be another CEO. It all depends. But what door God's open after that.
Yeah, you said you're gonna take your 6 months of rest, and it's well deserved. That sounds like a solid plan to me. I want to hear a little bit, because you talked about the schooling, you talked about the trainings, the tours in Afghanistan. 33 years of leadership, that's a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of focus that I'm sure was required of you. If you don't mind, before we cut to our first commercial break, can you share just a brief moment about the ways you held in tandem your familial responsibilities with your occupational responsibilities?
So sometimes you learn the hard way. It hasn't always been easy finding that balance, or what I like to call equilibrium. Because if you don't have that balance, things could easily, tip over and get out of whack and not be good, personally and professionally. So it's been hard. At times I've missed things that are important to the family, because I'm deployed. I'm in Iraq, I'm in Afghanistan, and you miss events. And then being back home and in this position here, you have the demand, whether if it's a hearing or the Pentagon press room or testifying on the Hill, and you have so much stress where you're trying to, not step on a landmine and be on Fox News or CNN News, because the focus wasn't there. Because of the lack of balance. And so sometimes it has required me to put a lot of time and effort where my personal desires or things that I wanted to do with the family, had to hold for a second until I could get back. The blessing that I have been just super overwhelmed with is that my wife and my children have been tremendous supporters of my career. So even when I've hit those tough spots, where I was absent, COVID-19, for 2 years every day, I'm in the Pentagon, worldwide BTC briefing, all the way up to the national level, and away from family. My family supported me. And so if it wasn't for their support, even when I was out of balance, they kept that equilibrium strong, where it did not impact, our relationships or our love. And so I'm blessed with a tremendous wife, Sonia, who's the better half, and 4 kids who are beyond amazing, that allowed me, even when out of balance, supported me to get me back in balance.
Thank you so much, General Dingle. We're going to cut to a brief commercial break from Cooper for Bishop and Allen University.
Okay.
And so part of what I am inviting people to do as we go in this campaign, I invite them to become a part of the experience, because you want to know that the person that would be a bishop has sufficient experience and understanding and knowledge of the denomination and its workings and its ways, that they can serve well serve the people well, serve the denomination well as a bishop in the church. And so I'm asking people to become a part of the Cooper experience, because I believe it is the kind of experience you can trust. You can trust me to do well, be well, and administer well as one of the bishops of the church. And so I ask you to become a part of the Cooper experience, because it is an experience you can trust.
Welcome back, family. I am grateful for your sharing and your transparency, General Dingle, and for your carving out time and space to share with our community. I want to hear, you talked a little bit about it in the first segment and your answer about your spiritual development and your spiritual journey in relation to your occupation. But I want to hear a little bit more. If you can go a little bit deeper, dig a little bit deeper, and tell us about some of those moments in your career where you may have questioned your faith, moments where you may have felt that your faith and your occupational fulfillments may have been at odds with one another.
Those have been few. Overall, it's always at the forefront, my faith and how I am as a leader. And that's one thing that the military espouses is, your personal belief and faith, are yours. No one can take that from you. No one can change that. How I've inculcated that into my leadership style and all of my assignments, has been just as Christ has led. Loving neighbors as yourself, and regardless of situations, doing for all, trying to help all, yet while executing the Uniform Code of Military Justice or my duties and responsibilities. The one time where, or the few times, a couple times where, I've questioned were more so not my faith conflicting with my job, except for the reality that is this job going to kill me? What I mean by that. So in combat, the very first time that, my location was getting mortared, or artillery coming into my location, and then we're got to get in a bunker to protect ourselves, and I'm questioning, like, God, why in the world am I here getting ready to get blown up? Flying in a C-130, out of Iraq, and what I thought was, almost like fireworks, of the flares coming from the aircraft as I'm watching it out the window, only to find out those are surface-to-air missiles being shot, at my airplane while we're flying out of combat at a theater, and I'm like, what in the world and why? I'm here, am I going to get shot down? Am I going to get shot? Am I going to get blown up? Those were the times where, I was like, oh, wow, am I where I'm supposed to be at? I'm supposed to be in the ministry. I'm supposed to be a preacher, an elder, itinerant elder in the church. But yet this thing can take me out. Did I go the wrong direction in my calling? And of course, obviously, Jehovah Jireh, the Lord, provided and protected me through those tough times. But it was those few times where, it scared me half to death of the outcome, or what was it? And it was because I was not following the right path, or calling from God. But outside of that, the rest has been easy. It's been like a light on the hill, or a candle, shining my light, through my actions, words, and deeds, which have been a ministry to impact people.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that experience. As you were talking, you asked the question, why in the world am I here? That is a question that people across the globe ask, and anybody might ask, the philosophical question of what it means to be. That being one of the questions that you had after 30 years of doing this military service, the many places that you've been, do you feel like you have the answer to that question now, whether it be why combat or why militarism, why this career? Do you feel like you have the question now, why in the world, the answer to your question now, why in the world am I here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it came later. It came after the Board of Examiners. It came after, diaconate and itinerant elder orders, much later, because I still was trying to bounce around. And again, your class, in Board Examiners, you're watching them, pastoring and doing this. And I'm like, man, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I mentioned the evangelist who spoke to me about I was on the right course. It didn't hit me until about 10 years after that, when I was elevated to the rank, promoted to the rank of 1-star general, when it hit me like a ton of bricks on the people that I am able to touch and be an example for, which was ministry. The different organizations where, folks, want to come. I was just speaking at a Harriet Tubman event for the Army chaplains, about 300 people here in DC, and the things that I think are so small, are impacting so many people, or as Evangelist told me, the sheep, who are following the shepherd, and that light and being able to feed and play a role, the gospel or a word of encouragement in so many people has just been overwhelming. Even the smallest things have turned into things that I was not expecting that have impacted other people's walk. So sharing that gospel through those venues, I've been in ministry, the entire time. I just didn't know it until later. I think battalion commander when it first hit me, and then the magnitude becoming a general officer, and the people that have been able to touch and see has been amazing. Even in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan, when you're there, one of the greatest things that we had was, church and the gospel service, and then serving on that ministerial staff in combat, and helping the spiritual walks of soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines in combat. It was a ministry that God had us, our staff, our ministers and preachers there to be a difference maker. And that's a blessing. Blessed with the gift of leadership that God has allowed me to exercise, is humbling, and it's just been a tremendous blessing. So yeah, I have the answer, and I'm just trying to fulfill it now. And then even in retirement, there's much more for me to do. And I have been perfect with it. I've tripped and failed and, not done, everything that I'm supposed to do, but yet only by the grace of God, therefore go I still at this. And there's a lot more that I have to do that I still got to figure out, post-retirement. How do I build upon the tremendous blessings and historical things that God has allowed me to do?
Thank you for that. I was at your retirement ceremony, and it was a grand occasion. It was a grand occasion. Thousands of people, which I think speaks to the leadership that you talk about and the relationships that you've built and the ministry that you have found yourself unconventionally a part of over the course of your years. That many people showing up to celebrate you, I think, is a reflection of who you are and how you have engaged your work and engaged your career. One of the things that stood out to me at that grand occasion at your retirement ceremony was the presence of your family, and particularly your children who are now following in your footsteps. Can you talk a little bit about the trajectory that your children are on right now and how you feel about the career paths that they have chosen to follow directly behind their dad?
So super proud of my children. I am tremendously blessed that my children, I say this and my family knows what I'm saying, didn't grow up like I grew up, in Prince George's County, Maryland, and, in kind of tough situations. I have a military family who 4 kids who've been raised in the church, but yet have made their own decisions, and each of them have their own character. So super proud of them. My oldest daughter, all of them are athletes, but my oldest daughter enlisted. She was a 68 Whiskey, a medic in the military. She was at the top of her game playing soccer for North Carolina State University, Olympic development player, starting African-American female in the ACC, playing against Olympic players and, bound to make the Olympic team, and she got burnt out and said, man, I'm done, Dad, I'm done. And she told me one day that, I'm joining the military. Dad, I joined the Army. I was like, what? The Army? No, don't do that. Go to the, Sorrel, no, not the Army. Said,
maybe the Air Force, they call it the Air Force, something else.
I said, the Air Force, go to Air Force, Navy, but not. She said, I joined the Army. I said, okay. And so that decision was solely hers to serve because she saw Dad, and Pop, my dad serving in the military. My dad served 20 years in the Air Force, retired, and then was the U.S. Capitol Police for 20 years. And so she made that decision all on her own because of the examples that she saw. She went in, served, made non-commissioned officer or was a sergeant, got out, received her master's degree, and is now an emergency planner, in Puerto Rico, doing fantastic. My second son, he's a DC or metropolitan police officer. I told him, I said, you should have came in the military because being a DC cop is almost like being in combat every day with what you deal with. And he's in a tough district, but he loves it and is living his dream. And so super proud of him. And then my younger son, he's a captain stationed at Fort Liberty, formerly Fort Bragg, North Carolina, doing fantastic. He's a Signal Corps officer. Super proud of him. And then my baby girl, she just graduated from George Mason University. And she's working with a medical government company, just graduated in May and doing fantastic. So all of our kids, my wife and I, super proud of them. And again, we know only by the grace of God, therefore we go us with the blessings we receive through the choices that our children made and how they were brought up.
Yeah. General, I think I would have to agree with you as an Army reservist. The baby girl should have went Air Force. But thank you for sharing that. Beautiful family, brilliant family, all doing wonderful things in their respective areas of career choice. We're going to cut just once more to a final commercial from our Allen University.
Allen University is a small liberal arts institution in Columbia, South Carolina, where we provide small class sizes, dedicated faculty, and a diverse curriculum.
Allen University has provided me with opportunities that will enable me to move confidently toward a fulfilling future.
My time here at Allen University has helped me grow in the field of information technology, and I'm sure it'll help you grow too.
Come to Allen University, where we teach the mind to think, the hands to work, and the heart to love. Allen University is a small liberal arts institution.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. General Dingle, we're going to close out with just one final question. And I think this will be such an easy breezy question for somebody like you. After such a robust career full of highs and lows and experiences across the globe, a myriad of leadership positions, it is certain that you will serve as a pillar of what's possible for so many people who are going to come behind you, not just your family and your children, but those who are also in the military who look like you and who are going to consider you an example of what all is possible. What word of inspiration, what word of encouragement would you leave for those who are watching and see you as the blueprint for excellence in service?
I would tell them priorities. Priorities are paramount with everything that you do. My priorities are my faith, my family, my finances, and fun. Faith, God first, always, in everything that you do. Family, is next. Nothing comes before family and loved ones, except your faith and belief in God. And then finances. That means your job. What is it that you're doing? You got to have a blueprint, and go after that blueprint on what you want to be and what you want to do. And as you identify your passion towards that blueprint, don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. Don't let anybody stop you, block you. The naysayers, the people on the sideline, you're the one who is on the field. Live your dream. And as you live your dream, and fulfill your passion as you pursue it with persistence and perseverance, because sometimes you're going to get knocked down. Sometimes you're going to get set back, or what seems like a setback. But you got to have that Invictus spirit, one that remains unconquered through tough times, so that you keep pushing. Don't let anything conquer you. And then finally, you got to have fun with everything you do. Take yourself serious, but you don't got to be overly serious, where life is so regimented and regulated that your impact and your passion, the flame goes out. Have fun with what you do. Someone once told me that the lifetime of an opportunity only lasts the opportunity of that lifetime. And which means that while that situation or that thing is there, and give it your all, put it all in there, because after a while, that opportunity is going to close and it's going to be over with. So give it your all every day. Be your best, be the best, and live your dreams by the grace of God.
Thank you so much, General Dingle. You all heard it. To prioritize your life and stay the course, beloved. Our chief editor, John Thomas, is coming on to give us some final remarks and extend gratitude to our guests. John?
Well, again, briefly, Reverend Brooks, General Dingle, I was not able to make the beginning of this broadcast, but I definitely wanted to come on personally to thank you for your service and to thank you for what you mean to the AME Church. And thank you for sharing your time with the AME Church. You are not just the general. You are not just a person of the armed forces. You are a clergy person, and you're one of us. And we don't take it lightly that you have time for us. And I hope that between Bishop Bryant's introduction to the interview today, to this brief moment you've been able to share in your very busy schedule, that you know that you are loved, appreciated, and honored by those of us in the AME Church. Thank you, sir. And I just wanted to come on as the son of Army captain to tell you thank you. Someone of an Army medical captain to tell you thank you. God bless you. And I will now turn it back over to Jasmine for her final remarks. Thank you, General Dingle.
All right. I don't have much more to say. It's all been said. Thank you so much, Editor John Thomas and General Dingle. And thank you to all of you who have tuned in. Until next time, family, peace to you.